Some persons in the room here, I won't embarrass them because you don't like to be embarrassed, but some persons are here visiting an ISKCON temple for the first time. And, it took a while to get here, didn't it? Gita Nagari is not around the corner. And it's not only they came from some faraway state, but to get here, I hope you didn't fly into the Newark Airport. If anybody has some travel, air travel, stay away from Newark Airport. Did you have that experience? From Phoenix? Okay. Hint. Stay away from for the time being, they have to fix a problem, and it takes forever to fix a problem. But the good news is there's lots of fresh air here. Take some home with you. And moo, lots of cows. I hope you are nicely situated. So the magic hat that had appeared just disappeared. It's not on the screen right now. Can we get it to work again? Somebody did something. Can you fix what you did? You just unplugged it. In the past, because of poor Wi-Fi signal, we weren't able to do live broadcasting, but it's working now. For those people that couldn't make it to Gita Nagari, they may be some other place, but still watching live stream, and they may send in some questions live. So that's new for Gita Nagari. Did some upgrade with their Wi-Fi system. For those of you that just joined us this morning, yesterday we began discussing Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. And I'll mention it again, even for those that were with us. Part of the meditation is to enter Vrindavan through sound. And this is with peacocks. There's some history of how the peacocks got here. Want to hear the history? Once upon a time, there weren't restrictions about bringing animals in from some other country, and so the devotees brought a male and a female. And guess what? The entire Juniata County became robustly populated with peacocks. It's to remind us of Vrindavan. It worked. And there's other things, but sound vibration in particular, to enter Vrindavan through sound. That's our desire, our aspiration, our sankalpa. So we heard about Krishna dealing with a demon named Shankachuta, and he had this nice jewel, the shape of a Shanka, or thus Shankachuta, and he messed around with Krishna. That was his problem. And Krishna played a little bit, and then he separated his head from the rest of his body, and first the jewel fell off, and then he gave the jewel to Balaram. Balaram gave the jewel to Madhumangala. Madhumangala gave the jewel to Radharani. Radharani gave the jewel to the sun god. The sun god gave the jewel to Satrajit. It's like the history of the jewel. Very involved. So this is a nice painting of the topic for this morning. Kāliya is the serpent, and then we see Krishna dancing on the hoods of the Kāliya serpent. There are many nice elements of this story. Or, like, Sri Radhika wanted to know, why did I select that particular? This is another, there are multiple. One of the nice things about this pastime is after Krishna got himself free from the coils of the Kāliya serpent, the serpent had many hoods, and with his many hoods, he was trying to bite Krishna. But Krishna was showing his dancing ability. He's the best of everything. And so he's the best of dancers, and he danced and danced. But when he danced in such a way that he smashed the hoods of the Kāliya serpent. Dancing doesn't mean you have to smash your dance floor, but he danced elegantly and smashed his hoods and smashed his hoods and smashed until you'll see some images. Blood was coming from his mouth. He was a hard guy some person, just the touch of Krishna's lotus feet, and it does the trick. Kāliya was a bad guy. It took a lot. But he eventually realized, the bad guy realized he's the personality of Godhead. And he surrendered. Good for him. It took a while, but he surrendered. But it's such a nice pastime. It's many nice features of this pastime. He subdued the Kāliya serpent. And I thought, to go along with our topic for the weekend, we're going to be hearing different pastimes. And as you hear, there are different pastimes. There are different features or levels of understanding of those pastimes. And the first is the easy one. Krishna, Krishna. There's a story. Once upon a time, and then the story is narrated, and it's very charming, it's mesmerizing, it's transcendentally uplifting, and it's very easy for the mind to become immersed in the pastime. And know it or not, within the pastime, there's teachings. Yesterday, Subal asked a question about, the lesson of protection that Krishna offered to the gopis. So, what does protection today look like? Something like that. So, it's different devotees have different ways of saying it. One devotee I know, his favorite expression is his take home. The application of when you hear something, how do you apply this, practically speaking, in your everyday life? So Dharma, any scriptural teaching, the historical accounts, Ramayana and Mahabharata, and you name it, Dharma is profusely presented. What's to be done, what's not to be done, how to live one's life, and then one can consider the practical application. And then commonly also, there's tattvas. In this particular pastime, it's the wives of the Kāliya serpent. The Kāliya serpent had a lot of wives, and they were very spiritually elevated. We'll hear some of their prayers, and they're like Brahmins or Brahminical in quality. Their understanding of tattva is profound. And there's, even in their case, it's not just they give teachings, but they have describing the rasa of, a little sneak preview. When they came after their husband was smashed and they understood he had surrendered, they came before Krishna with their little serpent children ahead of them, the soft move of the mother sending the child first. Very clever. It worked. And then their affection for Krishna and their affection for their husband, expressing the mercy that Krishna has given to this offensive. They understood how offensive he was. They don't hold back. But Krishna still was very merciful to him. His punishing him in the way that he punished him was appropriate. And they recognized it. And they were honoring Krishna for that. And then, but at the same time, so different relationships, and the tattva that they present is profound. And then, of course, the superlative of all things. There's something I've learned. I'll share. There's something that I've learned. If such and such is narrated, and you can't really understand the such and such that's being narrated, go to the tattva perspective. Go to the rasa perspective. And you're more likely to understand what you couldn't understand from the rasa perspective. Take away the rasa lens, and it becomes confusing, easily confusing. And it's certainly true in Krishna's pastimes, but in many other pastimes. Rasa trumps everything. It's like the final purpose of Krishna's appearance is engaging in loving exchange with his devotees. And the way he does it is stimulating their loving feelings. And other things that are involved in the principle of rasa. So I'm not going to go through the yesterday's discussion, but it's a nice principle. Learn this principle. We'll see it a little bit as we go forward in this particular pastime. So Krishna's in his childhood. He's graduated from calves to cows. No, he's still with calves. And so it means he's not 5 years old yet. 4 years, 4 months, something like that. That's Krishna's age. And what do little boys do? They do what's shown in this picture here. Little boys play. Even when they're doing some service, the herding of calves, it was their service. And Krishna wanted that service, and the calves wanted to be with Krishna, and Krishna wanted to be with the calves. And his father said, okay. So he had a big festival. Go Puja festival. Krishna's going to begin herding the calves. And then later he graduates to the cows, another Go Puja festival. And he used to have a festival. Let's do it. Krishna at the center. So, chapter 15, once, surrounded by his boyfriends, Lord Krishna went without Balaram to the river Jamuna. Now, this is a rasa and also a Līlā purpose. Balaram was left at home. It was part of Krishna's plan. And, there are different reasons given. One of the reasons it was Balaram's birthday, but it has something to do with the Līlā that's going to unfold. Because Krishna was in difficulty. That one of the sweetnesses, the sweetest of the sweetness things, is generally Krishna's rescuing the devotees. They're in trouble, like yesterday. Oh, Rama, oh, Krishna. So Krishna comes to the rescue. But in this case, Krishna's in the coils of the Kāliya serpent. And what are they going to do? Oh, Krishna. But Balaram isn't there. They can't say, oh, Rama, because he's not there. But so it's part of the rasa. And therefore, Yogamaya or Līlā Shakti or different terminologies, it was arranged and Balaram wasn't there. Purposeful. And there's another very important part that has to do with rasa. The important part is every morning, it's going to come in our final class. Every morning before the cowherd boys went out to take care of the calves or the cows, Mother Jasoda would do her thing, mothers and her little boy. So she bathed him and fed him and pampered him and decorated him and made sure his tilak was on right, made sure his peacock feather was on right, and straightened his clothing. Mothers, it was like the doting Mother Jasoda. And then off the boys would say, come on, Krishna, let's go. So off they go. And what do? Play. At that time, the cows and cowherd boys were feeling acute distress from the glaring summer sun. Afflicted by thirst, they drank the water of the Yamuna River, but it had been contaminated with poison. So you see in the background, there's the Kāliya serpent, and you see the cowherd boys, they drank the water, and when they drank the water, they were just overcome with thirst, all of them. Guess what? That's the Yogamaya potency or Līlā Shakti potency. They all became overwhelmed with thirst and drank water from the poisonous river Jamuna, and they became unconscious, as if dead. As soon as they touched the poisoned water, all the cows and boys lost their consciousness by the divine power of the Lord and fell lifeless at the water's edge. Now, it didn't say that they died. They became lifeless, as if dead. But feeling compassion upon his devotees, Krishna brought them back to life by his mere glance. Pretty good. I mean, Krishna's inconceivable potencies. Ramachandra, glancing upon the ocean, boiled the ocean. And Samudra had to come in with folded palms saying, I didn't understand you. Yes, what service can I do for you? So Krishna's glancing brought the cowherd boys and the cows back to life. Seeing them in such a condition, Lord Krishna, the master of mystic potency, felt compassion for these devotees who had no Lord other than him. Thus, he immediately brought them back to life by showering his nectarian glance upon them. Same painting, same scene, and with his eyes he can do anything. With any one of his senses, angani yasya sakalendriya vritti manti. With any one of his senses he can do anything. Prabhupada would explain this in so many ways. Mahavishnu impregnates with his glance. Who can do that? We'd have some problems if men could impregnate ladies just by their glance. It'd be a big problem. But don't worry, it's not going to happen. But Krishna can do, or his portion of a plenary portion can do. So with his glance, he can bring the cowherd boys and cows back to life. O king, the cowherd boys then considered, so what did they think would happen? Although they had drunk poison and in fact had died, this is not commentary, this is the verse of the Bhagavatam. Simply by the merciful glance of Govinda, they had regained their lives and stood up by their own strength. So this is the end of chapter 15, and the pastime continues into chapter 16. In chapter 16, here's Shukadeva Goswami narrating to Maharaj Parikshit, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, seeing that the Yamuna River had been contaminated by the black snake Kāliya, desired to purify the river, and thus the Lord banished him from it. Now, it was a little more involved than just said, get out of town. It was a pastime, but it was his banishing, subduing and banishing, and relieving him of his sinful tendencies. He was still in the body of a serpent, but he became free from such tendency. Now take a look at the Sanskrit. See the first line? Vilokya dushatam krishnam. Look at the next line. Krishna Krishna. Here's our commentators. Shukadeva Goswami is a poet. The river Jamuna is identified here as Krishnam. And the next line, Krishna is himself, and Krishna Ahina, that's the serpent, the blackish serpent, Krishna Ahina. It's play on words. And if you're not a Sanskrit scholar, that's okay. If you know a little bit about Sanskrit, it's just sweet. Next verse. King Parikshit inquired, "O learned sage, please explain how the Supreme Personality of Godhead chastised the serpent Kāliya within the unfathomable waters of the Yamuna, and how it was that Kāliya had been living there for so many years, not years, ages, yugas, ages. That's a long time to do anything. What to speak of pollute the river Jamuna with poison for yugas. So he wants to know, how did that happen? How was it that Kāliya did this? Commentators describe that for many yugas, Kāliya remained protected in this lake, exuding ever-increasing poison all around. The description of that poison is pretty intense. The unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead acts according to his own desires. Who could be satiated when hearing the nectar of the magnanimous pastimes he performed as a cowherd boy in Vrindavan? So that's what we're spending our time to do. We hope that you don't become satiated. According to Maharaj Parikshit, it's not possible. It's possible to become distracted. That's certainly possible, but not by properly hearing. Satiated means you like have had enough. You know, when you're taking prasadam, and someone says, "Would you like some more of this and that and the other?" and say, "No, thank you. I've had enough." Never gets to that place in Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Next verse. There's a nice tree by the side of the river Jamuna. Look at that. Within the river Kalindi, which is another name for the river Yamuna, was a lake inhabited by the serpent, Kāliya, whose fiery poison constantly heated and boiled its waters. Indeed, the vapors thus created were so poisonous that birds flying over the contaminated lake would fall down into it. He was a bad guy. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes in his commentary, a lake within the Kalindi. So he's explaining what's that mean? A lake within the Kalindi. He refers to Harivamsa to explain this lake was untouched by the current of the river. Being situated on its southern side, extending a distance of 1 yojana. 1 yojana is 8 miles, sometimes converted like that. 8-mile stretch along the southern side of the river Jamuna, where the river didn't flow in the same way that it flows elsewhere. Otherwise, the river, its current touched by the lake's poison, would have become unsuitable, unusable by persons residing in Mathura and other places. So it gives us an idea of the direction of the river Jamuna in this particular location, because we heard yesterday, Mathura is north, which means Vrindavan is south. So the river must be flowing at this point north, because if it continued flowing through this lake, so here's the explanation. Lord Krishna saw how the Kāliya serpent had polluted the Yamuna river with his terribly powerful poison. Since Krishna had descended from the spiritual world specifically to subdue envious demons, so that was the purpose, Krishna's intention. The Lord immediately climbed to the top of a very high Kadamba tree and prepared himself for the battle. He tightened his belt and slapped his arms and then jumped into the poisonous lake. Now there's the very same, it is said, the very same Kadamba tree that Krishna jumped off is still there. It's a pretty old tree. But the tree was preserved by some nectar that was placed on the tree, and so it's a Kadamba tree reaching over the river Yamuna. When we go, if Krishna permits, let's see, who knows? But if Krishna permits, we'll go to Vrindavan next year for yatra with Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj. Some of you were with us, Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj and myself, when we went to Haridwar, and that was really wonderful experience for all of us. And the history between us has a long background, but going to Holy Dhams, it was for many years we went together to Vrindavan. And he loves Vrindavan. He knows the Lord Vrindavan like the back of his hand. So it's going to be a blast. If you can come, please come. Sometime, we haven't picked a date, but sometime in the Kartik season, when it's too many people in Vrindavan, that's where we're going. And the place where Krishna jumped into the river Yamuna, the Kadamba tree is there. Here's a nice painting, Krishna jumping out of the Kadamba tree into the river Yamuna on both the left and the right side. Here's a children's book illustration. Krishna jumped into the poisonous water. And Kāliya wasn't on the surface of the water at that time, but the force of Krishna's entrance caused the lake to overflow. Not only a little bit. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead landed in the serpent's lake, the snakes, plural, there became extremely agitated. You came into my territory like dogs. Woof, woof, woof. And began breathing heavily, further polluting it with volumes of poison. The force of the Lord's entrance into the lake caused it to overflow on all sides. And poisonous, fearsome waves. Krishna can be heavy when he wants to be. Flooded the surrounding lands up to a distance of 100 bow lengths. You can guess what a bow length is. This is not at all amazing, however, for the Supreme Lord possesses infinite strength. So into the lake or into the river Jamuna, here's a very traditional painting. There's the Kadamba tree right in the center. There's the cowherd boys stretched out on the right side. They look like they're doing okay on the left side. And then there's the river Yamuna, and then Krishna's confronting the Kāliya serpent, who looks like he's living in a palace down there in the lake. And there's wives of the Kāliya serpent. Nice painting. Krishna began sporting in Kāliya's lake like a lordly elephant, swirling his mighty arms and making the water resound in various ways. When Kāliya heard these sounds, he understood someone was trespassing in his lake. The serpent could not tolerate this and immediately came forward. Look at this guy. Woo. Kāliya saw that Lord Sri Krishna, who wore yellow silken garments, was very delicate. His attractive body shining like a glowing white cloud, his chest bearing the mark of Srivatsa, his face smiling beautifully, and his feet resembling the whorl of a lotus flower. The Lord was playing fearlessly in the water. Despite his wonderful appearance, the envious Kāliya furiously bit him on the chest and then completely enwrapped him in his coils. This Kāliya was a powerful guy. So there's the painting. Look in the background, the cowherd boys and all the associates of Vrindavan, they're falling on the ground because they saw, uh-oh, Krishna's in difficulty. What are they going to do? Balaram isn't there, and Krishna's in difficulty. What do? You faint, that's what you do. When the members of the cowherd community who had accepted Krishna as their dearmost friend saw him enveloped in the snake's coils, motionless, they were greatly disturbed. They had offered Krishna everything, their very selves, their families, their wealth, wives, all pleasures. At the sight of the Lord in the clutches of the Kāliya snake, their intelligence became deranged by grief, lamentation, and fear, and they fell to the ground. Now what? The cows, bulls, and female calves, in great distress, called out piteously to Krishna. Fixing their eyes on him, they stood still in fear. They were very Krishna conscious, cows. As if ready to cry, but too shocked to shed tears. So all this clamor that's going on by the shore of the river Jamuna, it was such a loud clamor. It was heard all the way in Nandagram. Now those of you that have been to Vrindavan, how long does it take to get from Nandagram to the river Jamuna by this Kāliya Ghat? Long time. Even if you have a car, what to speak of walk. It's a long distance. But they panicked. They heard the noise. A messenger came, it is said in one commentary, a messenger came and told them, "Oh no, Krishna's in difficulty." They stopped everything and they ran. Here's the Bhagavatam. Seeing inauspicious omens on earth, in the sky, and in the bodies of living creatures, Nanda Maharaj and the other cowherd men were fearful, for they knew that Krishna had gone to herd the cows that day without his elder brother Balaram, because they had dedicated their minds to Krishna, accepting him as their very life. They were unaware of his great power and opulence. Thus, they concluded that the inauspicious omens indicated that he had met with death. And they were overwhelmed with grief, lamentation, and fear. These same three words are used repeatedly. Emotions are being stimulated. This is one of the things that Yogamaya does, or Līlā Shakti does. This is the rasa feature of the story. But, please appreciate the rasa that it's Krishna's orchestration. He doesn't need anybody's help to get free from the Kāliya serpent, but he's stimulating their emotion by, right at the edge and falling off the cliff and sounds bad, but it's ecstasy. It's a nice thing to understand that when negative emotions hit by Krishna's arrangement, overwhelm his beloved devotees, overwhelmed in a negative emotion, it's an ecstasy. Doesn't look like an ecstasy. But it's part of the teaching from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's an ecstasy. It's a symptom of ecstasy. And Krishna's allowing them to experience symptoms of ecstasy by placing himself in difficulty. All the inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the children, women, and elderly persons, thought of Krishna just as a cow thinks of her helpless young calf. And thus these poor, suffering people rushed out of the village, intent on finding him, so that they are rushing out of the village with Nandagram in the background. Balaram was in Nandagram, and he heard and he understood what was going on. Lord Balaram, the master of all transcendental knowledge, smiled and said nothing when he saw the residents of Vrindavan in such distress, since he understood the extraordinary power of younger brother. And Krishna is having fun. No worries. He's completely cool, calm, and collected, but he's got some other service coming up. He's going to prevent them from entering into the poisonous water because they want to rescue Krishna. And he tells them, no worries. You'll see the paintings. They're very nice. Even though Balaram possessed great love for his younger brother, he is covering up Krishna's various opulences by the pastime potency, Līlā Shakti. There's the phrase again. Which is acting in accordance with Krishna's desire. Līlā Shakti is enacted by Krishna because it's his potency, and it's the medium is Līlā Shakti. And there she goes, doing her Līlā activities. Krishna doesn't take pleasure in playing with me, Balaram is thinking, in my own form as Sheshanag, but rather he wants to play with this lowest of snakes, the mundane, petty Kāliya. Thus, Balaram is remembering how Krishna is assuming human-like pastimes. As you go along in Krishna consciousness, you'll start to, many things will happen. One of the things that will happen is the moods of different acharyas. And I've come to appreciate Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is like a superlative Rasika Bhakta. He sees the pastime, but he sees the pastime through the lens of rasa. And he doesn't hold back explaining the rasa of the pastime. And one can only imagine what kind of consciousness he's in to understand what he's understanding and feel what he's feeling and share it with all of us. But it's like he's a superlative personality in many ways. The older gopis were feeling, this is rasa, just as much distress as Yashoda, and were pouring forth a flood of sorrowful tears. Sounds bad. It's an ecstasy, Prabhus. They had to forcibly hold back Krishna's mother, whose consciousness was totally absorbed in her son. The residents of Vrindavan were overwhelmed with anguish and confusion when the young gopis, whose minds were constantly attached to Krishna, remembered his loving friendship, his smiling glances, and his talks with them. So their thoughts went to the love that they have for him, and thus it strengthened and nourished the intensity of their feelings, which were already super intense. I'm thinking of the newer people that are in our audience. How are you going to understand all this? But it's okay, even if you don't understand all of this. The principle is easy to understand. The Supreme Personality Godhead has very intimate associates with whom he enjoys loving exchange, and those loving exchanges are very colorful, full of variety, no limit to the unlimited range of ecstasies. So Krishna's personally, voluntarily, he left Balaram home. He, did all this wonderful activity to nourish these transcendental, their heightened love for Krishna's, the father, the elders, the ladies, the young gopis, the cowherd boyfriends, and they're looking at their life and soul, and he's in the coils of this poisonous serpent. Lord Balaram, you see in the painting, Balaram has got his hand up. He's put his hand in his father's chest, stopping him from entering the Jamuna. Balaram then saw that Nanda Maharaj and other cowherd men who had dedicated their very lives to Krishna were beginning to enter the serpent's lake. The Supreme Personality Godhead, Lord Balaram, fully knew Lord Krishna's actual power, and therefore he restrained them. That he's Balaram. Who can be stronger than Balaram? Nobody. So whoever tried to enter into the lake, he stopped them because he's Balaram. Because he knew Krishna's having fun. Krishna's having fun. Now then, at a certain point, Lord Krishna had enough fun. He's concerned about these personalities that are in great distress. So he's going to change the mood. The Lord remained for some time within the coils of the serpent, imitating the behavior of an ordinary mortal. But when he understood that the women, children, and other residents of his village of Gokula were in acute distress because of their love for him, their only shelter and goal of life, he immediately rose up from the bonds of the Kāliya serpent. They could have done this before. He didn't even have to arrange the pastime. It could have just been, smoothie. No bumps in the road, but he made some bumps, like some big ones. Continuing, chapter 16, his coils, tormented by the expanding body of the Lord, Kāliya released him. So Krishna just has mystic powers. Mahima said he just got bigger and bigger. So the coils of the serpent got bigger and bigger. And Krishna got so big, he couldn't contain Krishna anymore. He was in too much pain, so he let Krishna loose. In great anger, the serpent then raised his hoods high and stood still, breathing heavily. His nostrils appeared like vessels for cooking poison, and the staring eyes in his face like firebrands. Thus the serpent looked at the Lord, and the Lord looked at the serpent. Krishna, because he was in the lake, so he playfully circled around him, just as Garuda. You want a Sanskrit lesson? Is it okay? Here's a little Sanskrit lesson. Now, our guest speaker is in the audience. For those of you that haven't met him yet, I'm going to, hopefully Krishna will permit, we'll make a little introduction later. But Prabhupada gave him the name Garuda. And how many persons in the room don't say his name properly? Probably all of us. Commonly, we say Garuda, which isn't what his name is. There's no elongation of the second vowel. It's not Garuda, it's Garuda. I have a devotee in China that's the main translator, and her name, everyone mispronounces her name, Sarabi. I have to, like 500 times say it. Her name is not Sarabi, it's Surabi. If I'm not watching, they'll still call her Sarabi. So Garuda would play with a snake sometimes. Birds and snakes, cats and mice. You ever see a cat play with a mouse? They bat the mouse. The mouse is panicked. And the mouse looks at the cat looks at the mouse starts to run. The cat grabs the mouse, puts the mouse right in front of her, and stares at the mouse. And the mouth is trembling, and they play with them. And then they eat the mouse. But the play comes first. I've seen it. Just cats and mice. So Krishna was playing with Kāliya like a Garuda plays with a snake. In response, Kāliya also moved about, looking for an opportunity to bite the Lord. So they're going around and around and around and around and around and around. Having severely depleted the serpent's strength with his relentless circling, Sri Krishna, the origin of everything, pushed down Kāliya's raised shoulders and mounted his broad serpentine heads. Thus, Lord Sri Krishna, the original master of all fine arts, began to dance. His lotus feet, deeply reddened by the touch of the numerous jewels upon the serpent's heads. So it's a very special dance platform. And there's many nice paintings, hundreds and thousands, literally, of this particular pastime. It's a very, very celebrated pastime. So get used to seeing a few images of Krishna's dancing on the hoods of the Kāliya serpent. Of course, different artists have different ways. Here's one she's showing, he's holding his serpentine tail. And the serpent's trying to bite him, and Krishna's dancing and dancing and dancing. According to the Bhagavatam, the denizens of the higher planetary systems were watching, and they played music so Krishna could accompany Krishna's dance. Yes. Seeing the Lord dancing, his servants in the heavenly planets, Gandharvas, Siddhas, Sages, Charanas, and wives of the demigods immediately arrived there with great pleasure. They began accompanying the Lord's dancing by playing drums, such as mridangas, pandavas, and anakas. They also made offerings of songs, flowers, and prayers. Quite a scene, huh? Better than any concert. And Krishna's the master of dance, exuding poisonous waste from his eyes. Kāliya would occasionally dare to raise up one of his heads, which would breathe heavily with anger. Then the Lord would dance on it and subdue it, forcing it to bow down with his foot. The demigods took each of these exhibitions as an opportunity to worship him, the primeval personality of God with showers of flowers. Notice the flowers falling from the sky in this painting. Lord Krishna's wonderful, powerful dancing trampled and broke all of Kāliya's 1,000 hoods. Then the serpent, profusely vomiting blood from his mouth, finally recognized Sri Krishna to be the eternal personality of Godhead. Right in the verse, the Supreme Master of all moving and non-moving beings, Sri Narayana. Thus, within the mind of his mind, Kāliya took shelter of the Lord. Phew, took a while. There's some very nice paintings. His mouth looks like he went through a big fight or something. It just shows one of them. And his tongue is hanging out and blood coming out of his mouth. And it's just Krishna's dancing, but he can make his dancing very heavy. And so now comes Kāliya's wives. Kāliya's wives, their minds very much disturbed, desired the liberation of their sinful husband and the shelter of the Supreme Lord, the giver of ultimate shelter. They folded their hands in supplication and approached him, displaying through their words their elevated wisdom and knowledge. And so I'm not going to go through it all, but we'll go through some of it. There's 22 verses of very beautiful prayers. We'll just touch on some of them, but it was pretty hard to eliminate because they're really good prayers. Now here's a nice painting. Notice they got their little children in front of them. These saintly ladies placed their children in front of them, bowing down to the Lord of all creatures. And more, there they are, the wives, or some of the wives in the front. And here's the first of their prayers. Whoops. The punishment this offender has been subjected to is certainly just. After all, you have incarnated within this world to curb down envious and cruel persons. You are so impartial that you look equally upon your enemies and your own sons. For when you impose a punishment on a living being, you know it is for his ultimate benefit. What you have done here is actually mercy for us, since the punishment you give to the wicked certainly drives away all their contaminations. Indeed, because this conditioned soul, our husband, is so sinful that he has assumed the body of a serpent. Of course, they have bodies of serpents too. Your anger toward him is obviously to be understood as your mercy. So like 3 verses honoring, thank you very much for smashing our husband. Did our husband, this is another one, did our husband carefully perform austerities in a previous life? With his mind free of pride and full of respect for others? Is that why you're pleased with him? Or did he, in some previous existence, carefully execute religious duties with compassion for all living beings? And is that why you, the life of all living entities, are now satisfied with him? Same message. And another nice painting of Krishna's dancing on the hoods of Kāliya. Oh Lord, we do not know how the serpent Kāliya has attained this great opportunity of being touched by the dust of your lotus feet. For this end, the goddess of fortune performed austerities for centuries, giving up all their desires and observing austere vows. Those who have attained the dust of your lotus feet never hanker for the kingship of heaven, limitless sovereignty, the position of Brahma, or rulership over the earth. They are not interested even in the perfections of yoga or in liberation itself. Notice the, anyabhilasha shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam embedded within their prayers. They're going to go further, like describing who Krishna really is. O Lord, although this Kāliya, the king of serpents, has taken birth in the mode of ignorance and is controlled by anger, he has achieved that which is difficult for others to achieve. Embodied souls who are full of desires and thus wandering in the cycle of birth and death can have all benedictions manifested before their eyes simply by receiving the dust of your lotus feet. You can see these are very elevated ladies. They're not common. We offer our obeisances unto you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although present in the hearts of all living beings as the Supersoul, you are all pervasive. Now they're getting into some tattva here. Although the original shelter of all created material elements, you exist prior to their creation. And although the cause of everything, you are transcendental to all material causes and effect, being the Supreme Soul. They're not ordinary ladies. Obeisances unto you, who are time itself, the shelter of time and the witness of time in all its phases. You are the universe and also the separate observer. You are its creator and also the totality of all its causes. Then this is surrender. There's a number of other verses, but the last one I'm going to quote. There's another 7 verses. Please tell us, your maid servants, what we should do. Certainly, anyone who faithfully executes your order is automatically freed from all fear. So there's Nanda Maharaj standing by the side of the river Yamuna. There's musicians on the far left side, and there's Krishna on the hoods of the Kāliya serpent with his wives. So Krishna has heard their prayers. They're completely surrendered to him. Kāliya has, in his mind, accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and taking his shelter. So mission accomplished. The Supreme Personality of Godhead released the serpent Kāliya, who had fallen unconscious, his head battered by the striking of the Lord's lotus feet. Kāliya slowly regained his consciousness. Then, O serpent, you may not remain here any longer. Remember the question that we started this chapter? How did Krishna dismiss Kāliya? So we got the detail of how that happened. You may not remain here any longer. Go back to the ocean immediately, accompanied by your retinue of children, wives, and other relatives and friends. Let this river be enjoyed by the cows and humans. Out of fear of Garuda, you left Ramanaka island and came to take shelter of this lake. But because you are now marked with my footprints, Garuda will no longer try to eat you. So there's some history. We'll hear the history. or why he's in this lake to begin with. I'll narrate it because of time. Time is ticking. So, Kāliya was in Ramanaka Island. Now, some say, many people in Fiji say that's where Ramanaka Island is. Fiji. Who knows? But that's what they say. And he came all the way to the river Jamuna because he was told that this is one place where Garuda won't come to attack you. So I'll skip ahead because of time. In natural food for a bird, a bird like Garuda is fish and snakes. Yummy. So one time, in this very same place, Sobri Muni was engaged in meditation. Garuda was hunting fish, and Sobri Muni saw the fish was being attacked by Garuda, and so he cursed him. You ever come back here, you're going to die at once. So Garuda was not going to go back to this place. So that place was given to Kāliya because Kāliya, now back in Ramanaka Lake or Fiji or wherever it was, Garuda would come periodically to eat some serpents. So the serpents they made a truce. We'll provide you some offerings, just don't come and harass us. So one time it was Kāliya's turn and he was eating the offerings meant for Garuda. And Garuda didn't like it. So he started chasing Kāliya. And it became known by Kāliya, this is a place you'll go where Garuda won't go, so he went. There's a little history. There's more embellishments, but that's how he got there. So now he's telling you, go back. Ramanaka Island. Kāliya worshipped the Lord of the universe by offering him fine garments, along with necklaces, jewels, and other valuable ornaments, wonderful scents and ointments, and a large garland of lotus flowers. Having thus pleased the Lord, whose flag is marked with the emblem of Garuda, Kāliya felt satisfied. Receiving the Lord's permission to leave, Kāliya circumambulated him and offered him obeisances. Then, taking his wives, friends, and children, he went to his island in the sea. That very moment, Kāliya left, and there they go, back to Ramanaka Lake or Ramanaka Island. But it's almost over, but it's not over yet. Yamuna was restored to its original condition. Krishna emerged out of the lake, nicely decorated and smeared with sandalwood pulp. Yamuna's waters became clear and safe to drink. Now, it's not just they lived happily ever after. There's a nice sequel that's not in the Bhagavatam. And the sequel that's not in the Bhagavatam is Krishna had been in the water for a long time. He was cold. So he went to a hilly place, Dwadasya Aditya Tila, and 12 suns, the light of the heat and warmth of 12 suns. Krishna reclined on the top of this hill, and he got warm again. And that's the same place where Madan Mohan Temple is. Now, when we go to Vrindavan, I'm sure Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj is going to narrate this, because I've heard him narrate it like a dozen times, and it's so, the way he narrates it is so sweet. But so this is a celebrated place in Vrindavan, not too far away from the Kandamba tree that Krishna climbed. So now we'll move on to the next chapter. Having heard how Krishna chastised Kāliya, Parikshit inquired, why did Kāliya leave Ramanaka Island, the abode of the serpents? And why did Garuda become so antagonistic towards him alone? Shukadeva Goswami, to avoid being eaten by Garuda, the serpents had previously made an arrangement with him whereby they would each make monthly offering to tribute at the base of a tree on schedule every month. But the Kāliya came and took those offerings. Kāliya grew envious. This is from this children's narration. Why should that bird get all those delicious offerings, he thought. So he began to eat them himself. Garuda was very fond of these gifts of food. When he learned that Kāliya was stealing them, he rushed to the island. Garuda struck the huge serpent with his shining wings. Kāliya fought with his many hoods and sharp, poisonous teeth, but Garuda was too powerful. Kāliya fled for his life. Next verse. As Garuda swiftly fell upon him, Kāliya, who had the weapon of poison, raised his numerous heads to counterattack, showing his ferocious tongues and expanding his horrible eyes. Kāliya then bit Garuda with the weapons of his fangs. That was too much. Garuda, the son of Tarksha, in great anger and with great force befitting the carrier of Lord Vishnu, struck the body of Kāliya with his effulgent golden wings. Kāliya was also known as Kadru Sutta, son of Kadru, immediately fled to the lake known as Kāliya Rada, which lay within the Jamuna river, and which Garuda could not approach. Beaten by Garuda's wings, Kāliya was extremely distraught, and thus he took shelter of a lake adjoining the river Yamuna. Garuda could not enter this lake. Indeed, he could not even approach it for many yugas. Kāliya remained protected in this lake, exuding ever-increasing poison all around. And then here's the history. In that very lake, I mentioned this already. This is, rather than read the text, Sobri Muni is in meditation, and Sobri Muni became agitated, seeing Garuda come take the fish. If Garuda ever enters the lake and eats the fish here, he will immediately lose his life. So that's why Kāliya went to this place. After subduing Kāliya, Krishna rose up out of the lake wearing divine garlands, fragrances. We already saw this. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the cowherd boys and men, gopis, Mother Yashoda, Maharaj Nanda, and all the cows and calves saw Krishna coming out of the Yamuna, and it was as though they had recovered their very life. This is rasa. When a person regains his life, naturally he becomes absorbed in pleasure and joyfulness. They each in turn pressed Krishna to their chests, and thus they felt great relief. 9:30. Folks, the schedule got changed around, and I have 15 minutes left, and I haven't finished. And we want that, like, discussion is the best part of any class. Here's Bhaktisiddhanta writing on this topic. The banishment of Kāliya from the lake of the Yamuna has a most important spiritual significance. Those who have a purpose to create trouble among the pure devotees of Krishna by infecting their nature with their own malicious dispositions meet with a certain degree of initial success in their nefarious undertaking. This emboldens them to make a direct attack on Krishna himself when he appears on the scene of their depraved activities in order to restore the living faith in his own bona fide associates. But Krishna straightens the problem. Here's a photograph of the Kadamba tree, and here's a deity of Krishna dancing on the hoods of the Kāliya serpent at Kāliya Ghat, beneath this tree. Here's another Krishna dancing on the hoods of the Kāliya serpent and the wives of the Kāliya serpent. And this is the Kāliya Ghat and some Vaishnavas by this place. And Krishna dancing, this is a Prem Mandir in Vrindavan, a sculpture of the same. This is just paintings and paintings. This is ISKCON Fiji. This is the deity they worship in ISKCON Fiji. Krishna dancing on the hoods of the Kāliya serpent. Compliments of Tamal Krishna Maharaj, because he made this arrangement. This was one of his places. ISKCON Pune. Hare Krishna mantra. There's more, but time doesn't permit. So let's just see if there's some discussion. A little abrupt, but yes, I see a hand over here. Could you put your hand up again?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, I have a question. So when we were going through the verses of 37 and 39, I see that, it is fascinating and surprising to see even snake wives understanding Krishna's position as super soul. Like I understand, like body cannot define the consciousness of a soul. Still, I was just wondering, do acharyas mention if Krishna allowed them the intelligence while subduing Kāliya, or they had this understanding from before?
You're reading and you're mumbling. So just speak clearly and slowly. And what's your question?
Sure.
How do these ladies get all their wisdom? That's what your question is?
Yes.
That's it? They went to Gurukul. Now, how does one get this understanding? From hearing. Now, from whom did they hear? I don't know. There's no explanation. But the principle is from hearing.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you.
Now, serpent ladies talking, you ask me that question. I don't know. Okay. Way in the back.
Maharaj, I have two questions. The first is, I've heard other speakers address this question. I want to ask you is, what, among all the demons in Vrindavan, Kāliya is one of the few that Krishna did not kill, rather he just beat him down.
Yeah, he just sent him back home.
What is the reason he spared Kāliya's life?
He purified him, he didn't have to. Krishna's not a cookie cutter God. He can do different things in different ways, and he did what he did. No. Is there some esoteric reason besides Krishna's will? Of that question, I don't have the answer. But Krishna chose. But with the reason that he chose is what you're asking. Why didn't he finish him? He chose to. He purified him. And it's part of the pastime. He was very entertaining. He purified him by his dancing. And smashing. You have a second question?
Yes, Maharaj. Second question is, twice it was mentioned that the cowherd boys saw Krishna as the Lord of their life. And this is a rasa question. My understanding is also that the Ishtadev for the residents of Vrindavan was Narayan. They used to offer their worship to Lord Narayan.
Yes.
And for the cowherd boys, though, my question is for them: did they even have a deity or Ishtadev or anything like that? Or for them, it was just Krishna and nothing. There was no worship of Narayan or anything like that.
Would you like to answer that question, Garuda? Did they have a deity of Narayana in Vrindavan that they worshipped? Huh?
I've not heard that, actually.
Yeah.
I'm not qualified to respond to that.
Goloka? Gokula.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this question is related to the text where it was Kāliya's wife is praying to Krishna and asking whether he is getting this mercy because of the previous pious work. So I was trying to understand any difficulties in our life, how to see whether it's Krishna's mercy versus past karma. Could you please help? Thank
you. I'd like to respond to what your question is. And are you asking when misfortune comes, is it due to karma, or when good fortune comes, is it due to karma? Is that what you're asking? Which of those two is that?
How to distinguish it?
How to distinguish what?
Between the two, whether it's Krishna's mercy versus
when good fortune comes or misfortune is in your life, because he was sinful and now he got good fortune. So is the sinfulness the cause, or you follow what my question is to understand your question?
Yes, Maharaj.
So articulate your question more clearly.
So I was trying to see how to see any situation as Krishna's mercy versus...
Any situation. Now it's broad. Okay. Well, it takes intelligence. And most of us don't have any. We got language, but we don't really have intelligence. So you don't know how to apply, is it this or that? The discerning capacity is intelligence between this and that. So only if you have intelligence can you understand. And even if you have intelligence, there's multiple options, even for those that have intelligence. So then it takes Guru Sadhu Shastra and Chaita Guru to give the proper understanding. Is it this or that? Now, for us, aside from Kāliya, for us, how did we get here? That's like, the fall of the jiva question. And someone throws you a life raft. So wait a minute, before I take this life raft, can you tell me how I got here? So leaving aside how did it come about, the main business is, as we go in the direction of what life is meant for, human form, it takes mercy, and then the willingness to receive that mercy and apply that mercy, and then purification. Tadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upiyanti te. You know the verse. Tesham sata yuktanam. So the purification permits Krishna to give, or makes an arrangement for Krishna to give the intelligence to understand this or that. Until then, we may not be able to discern. So what to do? Carry on with what you know, the means of achieving perfection. And then in that stage of perfection, then you'll have a better capacity, better discerning capacity to understand this or that. Meanwhile, it's not so important. It's not as important, at least. The mercy that comes. Mercy comes despite our disqualification. It comes from the descending mercy. And Krishna doesn't give descending mercy because to this person because they were pious, and that person because they were impious. He doesn't give to the impious person. He gives his mercy everywhere. Okay? You sure?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hi, Paul.
I was thinking, for each, it was mentioned yesterday that for each pastime, for each demon that's killed, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives an anartha that's being taken care of. So for this particular pastime, do we know the...
Yeah, I have a number of slides remaining and I didn't get there. Let me go offline for a second. It's not in the remaining slides, so I'll have to look it up and tell you later. Well, it's probably envy, but it's the further elaboration.
Okay.
That's what he's looking for. Yeah, we have 3 minutes and 4 questions. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I apologize if I missed it, but how did Kāliya know that Garuda couldn't enter that lake?
I missed it also. Anybody here in the room have the answer to this question? How did Kāliya know that's a good place for him to go because Garuda won't go there? How did he know that? That's the question, right? Another, I'll take some time. There was a question yesterday about Jai and Vijay, and did you Ananta Shesh, did you circulate that document? Okay, give it to whoever's in charge of the circulating things, and they'll do it. Do you know who that is? Comedy? Okay. So that now, could you send me 2 text messages? one, what anartha is being represented by the killing or by the subduing of Kāliya. The other question is, how did Kāliya know he could go to this particular place where Garuda wouldn't go? I'll see if I can find the answer to those two questions. Then I'll send it to you when you circulate it. There's another question up here. Up here, just raise your hand, and this is our last question we're going to break.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I have a simple question yet.
Three-part question.
So I'm trying to understand the root cause of suffering in case of Kāliya. And was it anger and fear that he was running away from being chased out by Garuda? And was that the reason Kāliya was making everyone suffer and poisoning all the rivers?
Well, that's not exactly, because that was his disposition. He was just being himself. And he was being himself for yugas in this particular location. And he was protected from from one source, being eaten. So he's just being himself. And but it was in Krishna's place of pastimes, so that was a mistake. So Krishna took care of it. It wasn't for some other reason. It was his nature, envious.
Thank you.
That's it? Okay, time to break. We'll see you all back again after breakfast. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.